Hello everyone and welcome back to another Stitches and Scribbles tutorial. We're going to be continuing our Quarantine Cardigan by doing some edging on our Virus Stitch square as well as sewing it up, adding sleeves and adding trim to the cardigan. I ended my Virus Stitch square on a double crochet chain 1 row, which you remember was the beginning of our repeat row. So if you're not on a row that has that pattern, go ahead and add one and pause the video until you get to this point, because it's going to be important for how we put the edging on our project. So for the edging for your project, we want to try to turn these kind of dips in the pattern into a straight line so that when we sew it up it doesn't get all funky with the fan shapes. So we're going to start from our corner and single crochet into those first couple spaces. When you have only 2 spaces left at the fan that you're working on, you're going to double crochet into both of those spaces and treble or triple crochet into that big space in the middle. So we're going to do a double crochet, another double crochet, and a treble crochet in that big space. Then going back up the fan, you're going to do 2 double crochet, then switch back to single crochet. We're down to our last 2 spaces, so those are both going to be double crochets. And a treble crochet in the very center. You're going to continue this pattern all the way around, and in just a second I'll show you what to do when we get to the corners. Okay, now that we have reached our corner, we are going to look at the chain space that is directly above where those 2 fans meet, so it should be the one right in the middle. Because we want to get clean square corners by the end of this, in that one we're going to do a single crochet, chain 1, and do a second single crochet, and then continue on with our pattern as normal. What that's going to do is as you add more stitches all the way around, it's going to encourage that pointed corner to form. We are going to do another row on top of this one, but that's just to get that corner started. So you're going to continue the same pattern all the way around, stopping to do that single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in all of the corner spaces. I have now made it all the way back around, so you can start to see that I'm getting more of that straight edge on my project instead of the wavy lines that we had before. We're going to do 2 more rows of single crochet all the way around just to give us a really solid base to sew into. So you're going to single crochet all the way to the corners, but then in the corners do the single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in the same stitch to keep the corners pointed, so that we get a more clear square shape. So I'll see you after those 2 single crochet rows. Alright, so I have finished up my 2 rows of single crochet all the way around, keeping those corners with the single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in the same stitch, and I have cut off my end so that I can start the next part. The next thing that you're going to want to do is fold your whole square in half, lining up the corners, with the wrong side facing out. So the way to tell the difference between the wrong side and the right side is that the right side will kind of have those cleaner fan shapes, and on the wrong side they will kind of stick out and be a little bit bumpier because that's the back of what you were working on. The next thing that you need to do is take your tape measure or ruler, whatever you're using, and measure out 7 inches. That's how much space we're going to leave for the armholes. So I'm going to measure 7 inches from the folded part, not from the open end. And I'm actually just going to stick a stitch marker in there so that I know where to start sewing. I like using a stitch marker because it makes it a little bit easier. And I even put a couple of stitch markers along the way to kind of keep my work in line as I'm sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I have one right in the corner stitches, so in those chain ones. And I'm going to put one about halfway through the area I'm sewing, just to keep everything nice and neat. Next thing you're going to need is a yarn needle and a fairly long piece of your yarn to do your sewing up with. I'm going to thread that needle, and I'm going to start where that first stitch was and go ahead and knot the yarn right in there so it doesn't come loose while you are working. I'll come back later and weave in the end that this is going to create, but I'm not going to worry about it now. So I'm going to use a mattress stitch to sew up my project, but you can use a whip stitch too if that's easier for you. A mattress stitch goes in one end and then back in through the other side, back and forth that way. Whip stitch kind of just goes around and in repeatedly. I like the mattress stitch because it's a little bit less visible at the end as long as you do the wrong sides facing together, and I think it's a little bit sturdier. You don't get as many gaps in between where you sewed stitches together, but it is up to you. Alright, and once you get to that end corner, you're going to make a knot so that your seam doesn't come undone. Just like that. You can take those stitch markers out. So in the way this is going to work, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. These 7-inch spaces are going to become the armholes for your project. And the long open section, that's the whole width of the square, is going to become the part that, like, where normally buttons would be on a cardigan, where you can slide it on. So I'll come back in a minute when I've done the same thing on the other side. Alright, now that you have sewn up your sweater, go ahead and flip it back right side out so that we can do the sleeves and the edging for the main cardigan. We're actually going to use the same stitch for both of these parts. We're going to do back post, front post, double crochet. It gives a really thick ribbing on the edge of your project, which for something like this, it's kind of an odd shape and kind of drapey, I find really helps to weigh it down and make it sit more correctly while you're wearing it. I'm going to do probably about 6 to 8 inches on the sleeves, and probably 4 to 5 around the edge of the cardigan to get the size that I want. But this is where you can totally customize it to how long you want the sleeves to be, how long you want the edging to be to fit you correctly. It's up to you. You can even use a different stitch for the edging if you want to. So whenever I do edging for sleeves, I like to start right where the seam is. And in order to do front post, back post double crochet, we're going to start with a row of normal double crochet all the way around the sleeve. So I've started with a chain 3, and I'm just going to double crochet all the way around that entire sleeve opening. So I'll come back in a minute when I finish that first row. Okay, now I've gone all the way around once to make that double crochet base, so now we can start our front post, back post pattern to create that ribbing for our sleeve. So you're going to start with a chain 3 just like normal. And when I do front post, back post double crochet, I don't really count the chain 3 as a front post or a back post. I just always do a chain 3 in that chain 3 spot all the way up however long I'm working, and then I start with the post that's right after that. So I'm going to yarn over, and instead of going into the stitch, I'm going to go around that bar that the stitch creates and then do a normal double crochet stitch. For back post, I'm going to yarn over and go through backwards so that the post is popping up behind the work, and do a normal double crochet. So you're just going to alternate between front posts and back posts. Front post and back post. So you can already see it's starting to make that ribbing, or almost like a waffle stitch shape, and that ribbing will become more pronounced the more rows you do. So I'll come back at the end, and you're going to do the same steps on your other sleeve and on the main opening of your cardigan to create an edging. So I'll come back when that is all finished so I can show you the end product. Alright, so I have gone all the way around the edges of my cardigan. I did just a couple rows there, but my sleeves ended up about 5.5 to 6 inches long, because that's where I wanted them to hit when I was trying it on. I did get just to the very tail end of my 1/8 skein of that Tivoli yarn, so I do have 2 left over that will probably be used in Christmas items, because this turned out like a really pretty Christmassy green color. It's definitely an oversized cardigan, very slouchy, very not form-fitting, so I think that this will be really comfortable in the colder months. I will insert a couple pictures of what the finished product looks like, because it's very hard to see it in my tiny camera frame. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll have more coming soon. See you next time.